now. Hello. That's Olivia. So a literal equation, that's an equation that has two or more variables. So normally when we're solving an equation, like rewind a bit here. If I said, no, let's do this. No, that's not what I want to do either. Right, so here's an equation, y equals 2 times 3 plus 7. And we've plugged in a 3 where an x would maybe have been before. There's only one variable, it's y. We're solving for y, right? But with a literal equation, you're going to have two different variables, and you're going to end up needing to isolate one of those variables. You're going to solve for x, or you're going to solve for y, but it's not going to come out like this, comes out to 13, okay? A literal equation doesn't, because you have multiple variables. And what is the problem with having two different variables? You can't combine. They are not like terms, okay? So I think where literal equations are challenging for people is in that respect. Because you can't combine things more deeply, then it looks goofy. It's okay if it looks goofy today, okay? Your answer is going to look a little goofy because you're just solving for a variable, but you're going to have this other variable still involved, okay? So bear with me. The good news is you guys just did multi-step equations and single-step equations and two-step equations, three-step equation. Like you just did all of this. So the process is the same. It's just now there's going to be this variable that doesn't go away that tends to drive people a little bit nuts, okay? Don't let it drive you nuts. We don't need it to be a number answer. So take a look at this first one. It says, solve the equation for y. So if I want to get y by itself, what would I do?
Subtract 2x.
Okay, so I heard every operation you could do here. Add, subtract, multiply, divide. We want this to go away. Okay, so we have to subtract, not divide. A lot of people go, no, we have to divide by 2 and then we'll get x by itself. We're not trying to get x by itself. We're trying to get y by itself. So get 2x out of there. So if you think about it right now this is a positive 2x that we are adding to a y. We want to get it out of there. So if I subtract 2x, that is now 0. But whatever you do to one side of an equation, you have to do to the other, okay? So I'm going to subtract 2x over here, and I get y equals on the left. Slope-intercept form is mx plus b, right? Y equals mx plus b. So I typically put this at the beginning, negative 2x. We cannot combine that. They are not like terms. So please don't add those together. Please don't subtract them. You cannot combine them. So it's going to be a negative 2x. Is this plus or minus 7? It's a positive 7, so plus 7. So this would be your setup. Now, if you don't want to put it into that format, it's the same as saying y equals 7 minus 2x. Okay, I really am totally fine with you leaving it like this. It's just slope-intercept form, which we're going to work with eventually, looks like that, the first one. So I tend to put it in that first setup. It's not wrong if you do it the second way. Questions on that? Okay, so you're just trying to get y by itself. This one's a little bit different because now notice the difference here. There was no number in front of y here. There is a number in front of y here. So what's the first thing that we would do if we're trying to solve for y? We're not dividing by 2. Yeah, we got to get that 3x out of there first, okay? So we're going to add the 3x. Add the 3x. So right now, this is 0. I'm left with 2y equals 3x plus 14, or 14 plus 3x would be fine too. Have we isolated y? No. And we want to isolate y. We want y completely by itself. So how do you get y by itself? You divide. So if I divide by 2 here, I have to divide by the entire other side of my equation. Divide by 2 here. Technically, you could call this y equals 3x plus 14 over 2. I don't like it that way because there is more you could simplify. So what I would do instead is I would make it y equals, so divide both parts by 2. 3/2 times x plus 14 over 2 is what? 7. Okay, again, I will take this as an answer. I will also take this as an answer. As long as your y is isolated and you have simplified to a point of like, yep, this is fine, I'm good with it. Yes.
Would it be wrong if like I put 1.5x plus 7 because I divided 3 times 2?
It's not wrong. It's just that when we get into slope-intercept form eventually, you're not going to want 1.5x because that's your rise over your run. So you want to go up 3 and over 2. So I wouldn't mark it wrong if you said that, but I wouldn't get in the habit of doing it that way because it's going to impact you later. So any questions on those? So isolate y, get y by itself. It's essentially doing reverse PEMDAS, just like we did when we solved the equations for one variable. Okay, so here's the deal. It says, given the equation 10x plus 5 equals 80, where x is the number of pizzas and y is the number of sandwiches, how many sandwiches can you buy if you buy 3 pizzas? If you buy 6 pizzas? Now, you could right now just plug in a 3 and plug in a 6 and then solve the equation. But because you're plugging in multiple numbers, it's actually probably a little bit easier to isolate the variable you're solving for first. And then all you have to do is plug in your x. You can literally just plug it into your calculator, okay? So that's the goal on a problem like this. Yes, there's other ways you could do it that maybe feel a little bit easier to you. But I would say the best way to do a problem like this is to isolate the thing we're trying to solve for. So if they're asking how many sandwiches, you want to isolate your sandwiches because then you can literally drop it into your calculator. What variable is our sandwiches? Y. So we're going to solve this equation for y. Okay, so I'm just going to rewrite it here. 10x plus 5y equals 80. What's our first step if we're trying to get y by itself? Take away the 10x, yeah. Okay, so we are left with 5y equals negative 10x plus 80. What's your next step? Now we're going to divide everything, right? Divide everything by 5. And I'm just going to write this as 2 separate divided by 5 so we can see that we're dividing everything because all of this is divisible by 5, so we want to divide it, okay? So you get y equals, what does this become? Negative 2x plus 16. 80 divided by 5. Okay, so now here's the deal. This equation is the same as this equation, but just in a much nicer format, so that when they say, what if you buy 3 pizzas? What were the pizzas? Which variable? X. You can just plug in a 3 for x. So y equals negative 2 times 3 plus 16. Then if you want to find 6 pizzas, you just do y equals negative 2 times 6 plus 16. So when you solve both of those, you get your answer to each of those questions rather than have to plug it in and then rearrange and then plug it in and rearrange again, right? We solved for the variable and then we get this. So negative 2 times 3 is a negative 6 plus 16 is 10 what? Sandwiches. Okay, so 3 pizzas would be 10 sandwiches. This one, negative 2 times 6 is a negative 12 plus 4. So 6 pizzas you could buy, sorry, plus 16. Did I say the wrong thing there? 4 sandwiches. Does that make sense? Okay. So same thing for this next one. It says solve for m when n is these 3 different values. So you're plugging 3 different values in. Now, you could, right now, plug m in here, -2 in there, 0 in there, and 2 in there, and solve it 3 separate times. But it's going to be way more work that way than if you just solve for the variable. Oh, I did m. Sorry, that's n. I meant you could just plug them in here. So what I would do in this situation, 4 equals 2m minus 5n, they gave you values of n, okay? It says solve for m. That means we want to isolate which variable? M. If you're solving for m, get m by itself, okay? The first thing to do to solve for m is what? Right, we want to get that 5n, that negative 5n out of there. So I'm going to add 5n and add 5n. So right now I have 5n plus 4, or 4 plus 5n is fine too, equals 2m. What's your next step? Divide by 2. And I would divide everything by 2. So you get, I'm going to flip this around. M is by itself now, right? 5 over 2 times n, if you want to make it a decimal, 2.5n, you're welcome to. If you want to leave it as 5 over 2 times n, you're welcome to. This one's probably easier just to make it a decimal because they're simple numbers that we're working with. And then plus 4 over 2 is plus 2. So now here's our setup. It says when n is -2, 0, and 2. So you're going to plug in a -2, and then you're going to plug in a 0, and then you're going to plug in a 2. 3 separate things that you're plugging in to get those values. So m equals 2.5 times -2 would be the first one, plus 2. So that m comes out to what? 2.5 times -2 is? -3. For your answer. Sorry. Yes. This part of it, 2.5 times -2 is a -5. -5 plus 2 is -3. So that's your first answer. When n is -2, m is -3. Okay. Your second one, m is going to be 2.5 times what? 0. They give us a 0 next, plus 2. 2.5 times 0 is 0. 0 plus 2 is 2. Okay, and then your third one, m equals 2.5 times 2 plus 2. So you get 5 plus 2, or 7. Okay, so do you see why it's easiest if you isolate the variable first? If you didn't isolate the variable first, then you have to do all of this work 3 times. Why not just do it 1 time and then plug it into your calculator from there, right? So that's the whole point for literal equations, is it makes it really easy to solve for whatever piece you want to solve for, okay? Okay, take a look at this one. This one says, notice there are no numbers in this, right? Not a single number. We want to isolate the x.
Subtract the r.
We're going to subtract r first, okay? So this is -t minus r. We're taking an r away from both sides.
And then we divide by p.
And then we divide. So right now, -t minus r equals p over x. To get x by itself then, we have to divide, because right now we're multiplying. Okay, so this becomes x equals -t minus r over p. Now, what you could do is you could factor out that negative. I won't make you at this point do that, but it might be nice just to, you know, multiply by a -1 on both sides, so that you can put that -1 just out in front, and then it's t plus r, not on both sides. We'll leave the x alone. But you don't need to. I would say just be done here. Once you get that x by itself, there's nothing like, oh, I should definitely simplify at this point, so you can just leave it alone. Questions on that? Okay. This right here is a fairly exhaustive list of the things that you will have to work with from time to time. I typically try to use formulas that you know or that we've spent a lot of time on in class together, okay? So you might be asked to use these like in the homework. You may refer to this while you're doing your homework, okay? You may use this sheet while you're doing the homework. But like things like an area of a triangle, you should know that formula, right? 1/2 base times height. Have you done that before? Base times height divided by 2?
Yeah.
No?
Yes.
That was a look like never before have I ever seen that. Okay, so maybe you don't. Distance equals rate times time. Did you do that in science class? D equals RT. So formulas that you're gonna see, this is just your little like cheat card for you so that you make sure you're using the right formula when they ask you to do a problem, okay? All right, 4 more, and then we're done. This first one, it says, what is the radius of a circle with circumference 64 feet, round to the nearest tenth, and use 3.14 for pi, okay? So what is the radius given a circumference? So if you look at this chart, what formula are we going to use? That's area of a circle. Circumference is 2 pi r, okay? So here's what we're saying. If circumference equals 2 times pi times the radius, it says, what is the radius with a circumference of 64? Now, again, you could plug in a 64 and you could solve for r because it's a one-time gig. That's fine. It's not wrong. You'll get there. They're saying they think it's easiest if you isolate the thing you're solving for first. Did you have a question, Brody? Okay, so let's isolate the r. How do we do that? Not minus 2 pi. What operation is happening between the r and the 2 pi right now? This is multiplication. So we're going to divide by 2 pi and divide by 2 pi. Now, how's your PEMDAS? It should be really good because you've done it a lot for me. Do you remember how this bar works? It's like parentheses, right? So you actually need to throw parentheses around that if you're going to just plug it into your calculator. Okay? So what is the radius of a circle? R equals C over 2 pi. If our circumference is 64, where is that going? That's your circumference, right? So we're going to drop that in for C. So the radius equals 64 divided by 2. It said instead of the pi button to use 3.14. So just do 2 times 3.14. But make sure that you put parentheses around that. And then from here, try plugging that into your calculator and let's see how you do. 6.28 is the 2 times 3.14. What do you get what is your radius going to be? To the nearest tenth, so 1 decimal place. Did I lose you? Come back. Plug in 64 divided by, and then parentheses around your 2 times 3.14, or turn 2 times 3.4 into 6.28. What do you get? And plug it in, because some of you are going to do this wrong, and I need you to see why.
10.2.
10.2 is correct. If you got something different than 10.2, you're plugging it into your calculator wrong, okay? If you're going to plug it into the calculator, you need to go 64 divided by parenthesis 2 times 3.14. You don't technically have to finish off your parenthesis because your calculator will assume it, but I would just for the sake of consistency. So your radius comes out to 10.2 what?
10.
Feet, right? Label your unit. So 10.2 feet. questions on that? Yeah.
Is there gonna be questions like that on your homework?
Yes. So that's why we're going to do 3 more like that. Khalees.
I'm confused on where pi came from.
The formula. If you look up here, right, they were talking about circumference of a circle. This is the formula for that. So circumference equals 2 times pi times r. So you're just going to find a formula up here and use that to solve. Okay? Okay. Do you want to try this one on your own? Try this one. What is the height of a triangle that has an area of 24 square inches and a base of 8 inches? So look up at that chart. What formula are you using? Isolate. It says what is the height? So what are you isolating in that formula? The h, right? What is the height? So isolate your h. See what you get. Who's got a height? 6. 6 what? Inches. Height's going to be inches. Okay, so here's the formula. Area of a triangle is 1/2 base times height. We want to isolate the height. How do I get height by itself right now? I would do this in 2 steps. Okay, so if you divide by 1/2 h, that's hideous, right? That's weird. So let's not do that. It's true. You could do it, and you could get the right answer from it.
Wait, isn't it?
There's a better way.
Not
1/2 base times height is the formula. Oh, sorry. When I divided. Yes, you're right. 1/2 b. I wrote h. Sorry. What's a better way to get there? What's a good first step right now?
divide by 1/2.
What's the same as dividing by 1/2?
Multiply by 2.
Yes. Okay, so what I would do is I would multiply by 2. So I have 2a equals bh. Now, if I'm trying to solve for h, what do I do next? Divide by b. Okay, so we get h equals 2a divided by b, and now I would plug it in. Okay, so think about what we know. What is the height? It has an area of 24, that's your capital A, and a base of 8. So height equals 2 times 24 divided by 8. And that you can just plug into your calculator. 2 times 24 is 48. 48 divided by 8 is 6. And it's a height, so label it inches, and you're done. Okay. All right, example 7. It says the monarch butterfly is the only butterfly that migrates annually, north and south. The distance that a particular group of monarch butterflies travels is 1,700 miles. It takes a typical butterfly about 120 days to travel one way. What is the average rate at which a butterfly travels in miles per day? Round to the nearest mile per day. So we're talking distance, right? Do you see a formula that involves distance up here? D equals RT. So distance equals rate times time. The question is, what is the average rate? So what's the thing that we want to isolate? D, R, or T? R. So we divide by T. So R equals D divided by T. What is D? 1,700 miles. Your distance divided by 120 days. So the rate
is 14.2.
it came out to 14.2. It says round to the nearest mile per day. So 14.2 would be approximately 14 miles per day. Yeah, the squiggles mean about, right? It's a rounding. care if you don't make them squiggles. That's fine. Questions on that? Want to try the last one on your own? It's very similar. Give it a go. Pacific gray whales migrate annually from waters near Alaska to waters near Baja California, Mexico, and back. The whale travels a distance of about 5,000 miles each way at an average rate of 91 miles per day. About how many days does it take the whales to migrate one way? Said it went a distance of 5,000 miles one way at a rate of 91 miles per day. About how many days? So what formula are you using?
D equals RT.
Right. You're using this as your formula. See if you can figure out what are you isolating, which variable do you want by itself, and then what does it work out to? Look at this, you guys. This shirt, have I told you about this shirt before? I love this shirt. It's like my most comfortable shirt ever. It's so soft. But if I get anything on it, it like stays all day long. See this? Those are Kenzie tears from this morning. She was very sad because she really wanted to keep sleeping. And so I said, do you just need a hug? And she was like, yes. So I gave her a hug and she cried on my shoulder and they don't go away.
That's
Salty tears. Yeah. So it's like my remember shirt. I will never forget what happened in that day because it's on me and it won't go away. A tear. And one, yeah, I wash it and it's like clean slate. Oh, that's got to be like a biblical, it's like Jesus, right? It's Jesus right there. All right, what'd you get? 55 days. So what did you isolate? T. How do you isolate T right now? You divide by R. So time equals distance divided by rate. Distance is 5,000. The rate is 91. Yes, 91. So you just plug that into your calculator. T equals, it's about 55 if we round to the nearest day, 54.945. So 55, don't forget to label it. These are days. 55 days are a lot different than 55 minutes or 55 hours, right? And you're good. Questions on that?